Have you ever stopped to think about what really made Lord Voldemort practically immortal? Or why Dumbledore was considered the only wizard the Dark Lord feared? The answer lies not only in raw power or knowledge of forbidden spells. It lies in the most powerful magical artifacts ever created in the wizarding world, objects so ancient and dangerous that their histories have spanned centuries, leaving a trail of blood, ambition, and death. Some were forged with noble purposes, others were born from pure evil, but they all share something in common: the power to change the destiny of whoever possesses them. Prepare yourself, because you're about to discover the secrets behind the most feared and coveted objects in magical history, from the Deathly Hallows to the dark creations of dark wizards who defied the very nature of life and death. Before we continue this journey through the darkest and most fascinating side of the magical world, I need a favor from you. If you want more content like this, full of details that most people don't know about Harry Potter, subscribe to the channel. Each one of you makes all the difference here on the channel. And tell me here in the comments, from which city are you watching this video? I want to know if we have Potterhead fans spread around the world. Now yes, let's dive deep into the artifacts that shaped the history of the wizarding world. Let's start by talking about the Deathly Hallows. 3 legendary objects that, according to the story told in the Tales of Beedle the Bard, were gifted by death itself to 3 wizard brothers. The legend tells that Antioch, Cadmus, and Ignotus Peverell tricked death by crossing a dangerous river using magic, and she, feigning admiration, offered each of them a gift. Antioch, the eldest and most arrogant, asked for an unbeatable wand. Cadmus, driven by loss, wished to bring back someone who had died. Ignotus, the wisest, asked for something that would allow him to leave that place without being followed by death. The Elder Wand, also known as the Wand of Destiny, was the first of these deadly gifts. Made of elder wood with a thestral tail hair core, it possessed powers beyond any other wand ever created. Its first owner, Antioch Peverell, boasted of its invincibility and ended up murdered while he slept by a wizard who coveted his power. And so began a trail of blood that would last centuries. The wand changed hands countless times, always through defeat or death of its previous owner. It passed through wizards like Emeric the Evil and Egbert the Egregious, leaving destruction wherever it went. In the 18th century, the wand came into the hands of Loxias, a wizard who used its power to terrorize southern England. After him came Arcus or Livius, depending on which historical account you believe, and eventually it reached Gregorovitch, the famous wand maker from Eastern Europe. But Gregorovitch didn't win the wand through an honorable duel. A young thief broke into his workshop and stole it from him while he was still trying to discover its secrets. That thief was Gellert Grindelwald, who would use the Elder Wand to sow terror across Europe for decades. Grindelwald wielded the wand in his war against muggles and wizards who opposed his vision of magical supremacy. With it, he built the prison of Nurmengard and commanded an army of fanatical followers. But his reign of terror came to an end in 1945, when Albus Dumbledore, his former friend and love from youth, confronted him in a legendary duel. Dumbledore won, despite Grindelwald possessing the most powerful wand ever created, proving that raw power doesn't surpass skill, intelligence, and moral strength. For decades, Dumbledore kept the Elder Wand, using it to perform extraordinary magic, but always with wisdom and moderation. He never boasted of possessing it, and very few knew that the legendary wand was in his hands. At the top of Hogwarts Astronomy Tower, on the night he was killed, Dumbledore was disarmed by Draco Malfoy. At that moment, without anyone realizing it, the wand's allegiance passed to the young Malfoy, although the physical wand was buried with Dumbledore. Lord Voldemort, obsessed with the idea of becoming invincible, discovered the existence of the Elder Wand through his research on the Deathly Hallows. He violated Dumbledore's tomb and stole the wand, believing he would finally have the power necessary to defeat Harry Potter. But Voldemort made a fatal mistake. He murdered Snape, thinking that would win him the wand's allegiance, without knowing that Draco and later Harry Potter were its true masters. During the Battle of Hogwarts, when Voldemort cast the killing curse at Harry with the Elder Wand, it refused to kill its true master. The spell rebounded and Voldemort was destroyed by his own curse. After the battle, Harry Potter, now the true Master of Death, by possessing all three Hallows, did something that none of his predecessors had the courage or wisdom to do. He returned the Elder Wand to Dumbledore's tomb, hoping that when he died a natural death, the wand's power would die with him. Years later, as an adult, Harry would use his own Holly Wand to repair his Holly and Phoenix Feather Wand that had broken, demonstrating that the Elder Wand still responded to him when necessary. The second Deathly Hallow was the Resurrection Stone, given to Cadmus Peveril. This dark object had the power to bring back the dead, or at least some form of them. Cadmus used the stone to bring back the woman he loved and planned to marry, but she came back different. She was cold, distant, separated from him by an invisible veil. She suffered from being torn from eternal rest. Tormented by pain and the impossibility of truly having the woman back, Cadmus ended up taking his own life to finally join her. The stone remained in the Peveril family and eventually was passed through generations until it reached the Gaunt family. The Resurrection Stone was set in a ring that belonged to Marvolo Gaunt, Voldemort's maternal grandfather. Marvolo valued the ring not for the stone itself, but for the Peveril coat of arms engraved on it, which he believed to be Slytherin's coat of arms. The ring passed to his son Morphin and eventually was stolen by Tom Riddle, who transformed it into a Horcrux without ever realizing he possessed one of the Deathly Hallows. He split his soul and sealed it in the ring, adding powerful protective curses to the object. Years later, Dumbledore located the ring at the Gaunt house. Recognizing the Resurrection Stone, he had a moment of weakness. Temporarily forgetting the curses protecting the Horcrux, he put on the ring, desperate to use the stone, and apologized to his deceased siblings, Ariana and Aberforth, for the mistakes he had made in his youth. Voldemort's curse struck him instantly, beginning to kill him slowly. Only Severus Snape's quick intervention contained the curse in his right hand, but Dumbledore knew he had at most a year to live. Dumbledore destroyed the ring to eliminate the Horcrux, but preserved the Resurrection Stone. He hid it inside the golden snitch that Harry Potter had caught in his first Quidditch match, knowing Harry would need it at the right moment. During the Battle of Hogwarts, when Harry walked to the Forbidden Forest to surrender to Voldemort, he opened the snitch and retrieved the stone. With it, Harry summoned the spirits of his parents, Sirius Black and Remus Lupin. They weren't ghosts or reanimated bodies, but something between the living and the dead, present enough to comfort Harry in his final moments of life. They walked beside him, invisible to everyone except Harry, giving him courage to face death. James Potter asked if dying hurt, and Harry answered it was quicker than falling asleep. Lily said he had been very brave. Sirius reminded him that dying was like passing through the veil in the Department of Mysteries. And Lupin apologized for leaving his son, Teddy, behind. When Harry was about to reveal himself to Voldemort, he let the stone fall to the forest floor, where it would remain lost forever, trampled and buried under leaves and earth. Harry deliberately didn't try to find it afterward, understanding that death shouldn't be reversed and that the dead deserve to rest in peace. The third and wisest of the Deathly Hallows was the Cloak of Invisibility, gifted to Ignotus Peveril. Unlike other invisibility cloaks that eventually lose their power, become opaque with time, or are penetrated by revealing spells, the original Cloak of Invisibility was perfect and eternal. It completely hid whoever was under it, no matter how powerful the wizard trying to detect it. It resisted summoning spells, couldn't be damaged, and would never age or lose its magic. Ignotus Peveril used the cloak wisely throughout his life, avoiding death until an advanced age. When he finally felt it was time, he passed the cloak to his son and went to greet death as an old friend. The cloak was transmitted through generations of the Peveril family and eventually reached the Potter family through the female line of descent. James Potter possessed it when he and Lily were hiding in Godric's Hollow under the Fidelius charm. Before they were murdered, James had lent the cloak to Dumbledore, who was studying the Deathly Hallows. Dumbledore kept the cloak for over a decade, until on Harry's first Christmas at Hogwarts, he returned it anonymously. Harry received it wrapped in a package with a note saying it had belonged to his father, and that it was time to return it to him. During his years at Hogwarts, Harry used the cloak repeatedly, escaping from Filch, exploring the castle at night, visiting Hagrid, and eventually using it on much more dangerous missions. The cloak protected him when he invaded the Ministry of Magic, when he infiltrated Gringotts, and during the Battle of Hogwarts. The true nature of the cloak as one of the Deathly Hallows was only revealed when Xenophilius Lovegood explained the legend to Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Xenophilius drew the symbol of the Deathly Hallows, a triangle representing the cloak, a circle for the stone, and a vertical line for the wand, explaining that whoever gathered all three would become the Master of Death. Harry eventually possessed all three, although he never actively sought that title. After the war, he kept only the cloak, passing it to his own children, as Ignotus had done so many centuries ago. Now let's talk about the darkest and most fearsome creations of the wizarding world, the Horcruxes. These objects represent the darkest magic ever conceived, a crime against the very nature of life and death. Creating a Horcrux requires deliberate murder, using that supreme act of evil to tear one's own soul into pieces. A fragment of that shattered soul is then sealed in an object through rituals so terrible that even dark magic books refuse to describe the complete details. Tom Riddle's diary was the first Horcrux ever created, made when he was only 16 years old. In his 6th year at Hogwarts, Tom discovered the existence of the Chamber of Secrets and freed the basilisk that had lived there for 1,000 years. He used the basilisk to attack Muggle-born students, eventually killing Moaning Myrtle in the second-floor girls' bathroom. Using that murder, Riddle tore his soul for the first time and sealed a fragment of it in his personal diary, a simple black notebook that held his memories and thoughts. But the diary was much more than a simple Horcrux. It was Voldemort's plan to return to power even after his fall. Decades later, Lucius Malfoy, following instructions he had received before his master's fall, planted the diary in Ginny Weasley's belongings during a fight with Arthur Weasley at Flourish and Blots. Ginny began writing in the diary, pouring her deepest secrets, fears, and feelings into its pages. Tom Riddle's soul fragment responded, pretending to be an understanding friend, gaining her trust. Gradually, Tom Riddle's memory began to drain Ginny's life force, becoming stronger while she became weaker. He took control of her body, forcing her to open the Chamber of Secrets again and release the basilisk. Students were petrified, and threatening messages were written on the walls with blood. When Ginny finally tried to get rid of the diary by throwing it in the toilet in Myrtle's bathroom, Harry found it. He wrote in the diary and was transported to a memory where he witnessed Tom Riddle framing Hagrid for opening the chamber 50 years earlier. Eventually, Ginny was dragged into the Chamber of Secrets itself, where Tom Riddle's memory planned to completely drain her life to become solid and real again. Harry followed her there and faced both the basilisk and Tom Riddle. With the help of Fawkes, Dumbledore's phoenix, Harry destroyed the basilisk, but was wounded by one of its venomous fangs. That same fang, soaked in basilisk venom, one of the few substances capable of destroying a Horcrux, was used by Harry to stab the diary. The soul fragment inside it was destroyed, Riddle disappeared screaming, and Ginny was saved. The Gaunt family ring was the second Horcrux, created after Riddle murdered his Muggle father and paternal grandparents at the Riddle mansion. Tom found the ring with his uncle Morfin Gaunt, altered his memories to make him appear guilty of the murders, and stole the ring that had belonged to his grandfather Marvolo. He transformed the ring into a Horcrux without realizing that the black stone set in it was actually the Resurrection Stone, one of the Deathly Hallows. Voldemort hid the ring in the ruined Gaunt house, the last place where Slytherin's descendants had lived. He surrounded the ring with multiple layers of magical protection, including extremely powerful curses designed to kill anyone who tried to touch or wear it. The deadliest of these curses was linked directly to the ring and would begin killing the victim the moment they made contact with it. As mentioned earlier, this was the trap that mortally wounded Dumbledore when he, in a moment of personal weakness, forgot to be cautious and put on the ring. Dumbledore managed to destroy the Horcrux using the Sword of Gryffindor, impregnated with basilisk venom since Harry used it to kill the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets years before. The sword, being goblin-forged, absorbed only what strengthened it, and the basilisk venom made it permanently capable of destroying Horcruxes. But the damage was done. Voldemort's curse was killing Dumbledore, and this led to the plan for Snape to kill him at the right moment, keeping Draco Malfoy from having to commit murder and ensuring the overall plan against Voldemort continued. Slytherin's locket was an ancient jewel that had belonged to Salazar Slytherin himself, one of the 4 founders of Hogwarts. It was an ornate gold locket with a serpent in the shape of an S, encrusted with emeralds. For generations, it remained in Slytherin's family until it reached Merope Gaunt, Voldemort's mother. Desperately poor and abandoned by her Muggle husband, Merope sold the locket to Caractacus Burke for only 10 galleons, a fraction of its real value. Burke then sold the locket to Hepzibah Smith, a wealthy witch who collected items related to Hogwarts founders. Tom Riddle, already working for Burke, visited Hepzibah, and she proudly showed him her 2 greatest acquisitions, Slytherin's locket and Hufflepuff's cup. Recognizing the locket that had belonged to his family, Riddle murdered her, made it look like a domestic accident, blamed Hoki, Hepzibah's house elf, and stole both objects. He used Hepzibah's murder to create another Horcrux, sealing a piece of his soul in his ancestor's locket. Voldemort hid the locket in a seaside cave he had discovered during his miserable childhood at the orphanage. It was the place where he had tormented 2 other children, Billy Stubbs and Amy Benson, taking them into a dark cave and doing something so terrible to them that they were never the same. The cave was protected by extremely complex and sinister magic. To reach the locket, it was necessary to cross an underground lake infested with inferi, reanimated corpses of Voldemort's victims who dragged intruders into the dark depths of the water. The locket was hidden in a stone basin filled with a luminous green potion that could only be removed by being drunk. The potion caused extreme psychological torment, forcing whoever drank it to relive their worst memories and deepest fears. Dumbledore and Harry went there together, and Dumbledore insisted on drinking all the potion himself. As he drank, he was reduced to a state of agony, begging them to stop, reliving his sister Ariana's death, and pleading for forgiveness. Harry was forced to make Dumbledore continue drinking cup after cup of the liquid torture until they could finally take the locket. But when they finally opened the locket, they discovered it was a fake, containing only a note from someone who signed as R.A.B. R.A.B. was Regulus Arcturus Black, Sirius Black's younger brother and a Death Eater who had defected. Regulus discovered about the Horcruxes when Voldemort borrowed his house elf, Kreacher, to test the cave's defenses. Voldemort forced Kreacher to drink the potion, left him in the cave to die, and left with the locket, But Kreacher managed to disapparate because Voldemort never considered house elf magic as a threat. When Regulus discovered what had happened and realized the true nature of what Voldemort had become, he was horrified. He decided to betray his master. Regulus ordered Kreacher to take him to the cave. He drank the potion alone, experiencing the same torment Dumbledore would experience years later, and ordered Kreacher to switch the real locket for a replica and destroy the original. Regulus was dragged into the lake by the Inferi and drowned, dying at 18 years old, but his sacrifice was for a noble cause. Unfortunately, Kreacher couldn't destroy the real locket. He kept it hidden at number 12 Grimmauld Place for years, until Mundungus Fletcher stole it during the house cleaning. Dolores Umbridge later confiscated the locket from Mundungus as a bribe and wore it around her neck as if it were just a pretty jewel, with no idea of the evil she carried. Harry, Ron and Hermione invaded the Ministry of Magic in disguise to steal the locket from Umbridge. Once they recovered it, they discovered they had no means to destroy it. The locket began to exert a terrible influence on whoever wore it. It amplified insecurities, fears, and negative thoughts, becoming especially cruel with Ron, who already struggled with feelings of inadequacy. The locket whispered poisons into his mind, saying that Hermione and Harry didn't need him, that he was the least loved of his family, that Hermione preferred Harry. The locket's influence finally became so unbearable that Ron abandoned Harry and Hermione in a moment of anger and despair. Weeks later, Ron returned, guided by the Deluminator that Dumbledore had left him. He saved Harry from drowning in the frozen lake and had the opportunity to destroy the locket with the Sword of Gryffindor. But when Ron prepared to strike it, the locket opened and projected cruel visions of Ron's worst fears. He saw Harry and Hermione mocking him, saying he was useless, that his mother preferred Harry as a son. He saw Harry and Hermione kissing, a physical manifestation of his deepest fear. With a cry of rage and determination, Ron destroyed the locket, and the soul fragment inside it was obliterated, finally freeing him from its malignant influence. Hufflepuff's cup was another treasure of the Hogwarts founders, a small golden cup with 2 handles, decorated with an engraved badger and encrusted with precious stones. Like the locket, it had belonged to Hepzibah Smith and was stolen by Tom Riddle on the same day he murdered her. Riddle transformed the cup into a Horcrux, but chose an even more secure hiding place for it than for the locket. He entrusted it to Bellatrix Lestrange, his most loyal and fanatical follower, who kept it in her family's most secure vault at Gringotts. The Lestrange vault was one of the oldest and deepest at Gringotts, located hundreds of meters below the surface, protected by some of the most powerful security spells the goblins could create. There was the Flagranti Curse, which made any touched object burn red-hot and multiply infinitely, burying thieves under burning copies of the treasure they tried to steal. There was also a blind dragon, a female Ukrainian iron belly that had been abused and tortured by the goblins for years to act as guardian. The dragon was conditioned to retreat at the sound of certain metal tools, having learned through pain that that sound meant punishment. Harry, Ron and Hermione invaded Gringotts in disguise, with Hermione using polyjuice to look like Bellatrix. They tricked the goblins and descended to the vault, but once inside, everything started going wrong. Hermione's disguise was discovered, the goblins attacked them, and they were forced to enter the vault while being pursued. Inside the vault, they found mountains of treasures, but the Flagranti Curse was active. Everything they touched burned and multiplied. Harry finally located the cup on a high shelf, but when Griphook, the goblin who had helped them, took the Sword of Gryffindor and betrayed them, they were trapped, being buried under burning gold and treasures. In desperation, they managed to grab the cup and escape the vault, only to face the dragon. Hermione had the insane idea of freeing the dragon and riding it out of Gringotts. They mounted the blind creature's back as it destroyed everything in its path. breaking the chains that had held it for years, climbing through Gringotts tunnels, and finally exploding through the bank's marble floor in the middle of Diagon Alley. The dragon flew over London with 3 teenage wizards clinging to its back, eventually landing in a lake where they could finally dismount. It was one of the most spectacular escapes in Wizarding World history. Hufflepuff's cup was eventually destroyed by Hermione Granger in the Chamber of Secrets during the Battle of Hogwarts. She and Ron returned to the chamber, where Ron managed to imitate the parcel-tongue sounds he had heard Harry make years before to open the door. They collected more basilisk fangs, and Hermione used one of them to destroy the cup. The soul fragment inside it let out a horrible scream before being obliterated, one more Horcrux eliminated, bringing Voldemort one step closer to mortality. Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem was perhaps the most difficult Horcrux to locate. The diadem was an elaborate golden tiara that, according to legend, increased the wisdom of whoever wore it. Rowena Ravenclaw, the Ravenclaw founder, had created it centuries ago, but her daughter Helena stole it and fled with it to Albania, desperately seeking to be more intelligent than her famous mother. Rowena, on her deathbed, sent the Bloody Baron, a man who loved Helena, to bring her back. But when Helena refused to return with him, the Baron killed her in a fit of rage, and then, devastated by what he had done, took his own life. Helena hid the diadem in a hollow tree in a forest in Albania, where it remained lost for centuries. She became the Ravenclaw ghost, the Grey Lady, wandering the corridors of Hogwarts but never revealing what she had done or where the diadem was. Tom Riddle discovered the story when he was still a student. He charmed Helena, feigning admiration for her mother and making her reveal where she had hidden the diadem. Years later, as Lord Voldemort, he travelled to Albania, found the diadem, and transformed it into a Horcrux, using the murder of an Albanian peasant to split his soul once more. Voldemort returned to Hogwarts to hide the diadem, believing the castle was the safest and most significant place for his Horcruxes. He met with Dumbledore, already headmaster of the school, pretending to be interested in a defense against the dark arts teaching position. Dumbledore refused, seeing through his intentions, but Voldemort managed to enter the castle long enough to hide the diadem in the Room of Requirement. He placed it atop an old bust, marking the spot with an old dusty blonde wig and a tarnished tiara, in a room so full of objects hidden over 1,000 years that it seemed impossible to find anything specific there. The Room of Requirement literally contained centuries of things hidden by Hogwarts students. Mountains of forbidden books, cursed objects, magical experiments gone wrong, unwanted gifts, evidence of student crimes, all piled in precarious towers reaching to the invisible ceiling. It was a labyrinth of narrow corridors between piles of magical junk. Harry only managed to locate the diadem because he obtained information from the Grey Lady, who finally revealed her story after he appealed to her conscience and remorse. During the Battle of Hogwarts, Harry, Ron and Hermione entered the Room of Requirement to retrieve the diadem, but were attacked by Draco Malfoy, Gregory Goyle and Vincent Crabbe. Crabbe, in his arrogance and cruelty, conjured fiend fire, an extremely powerful cursed fire impossible to control. The fiend fire took the form of giant creatures made of flames, serpents, dragons and beasts that pursued anything living. The fire quickly got out of control, consuming the entire Room of Requirement. Objects from 1,000 years of Hogwarts history were destroyed in minutes. Crabbe was consumed by his own spell, dying in the flames he had created. Harry, Ron and Hermione escaped on broomsticks, flying through the inferno of magical fire. In a surprising moment of heroism, Harry returned and saved Draco Malfoy from the flames, despite Draco having spent years trying to harm him. The diadem was destroyed by the fiend fire, one of the few methods capable of destroying a Horcrux besides basilisk venom. The Voldemort soul fragment inside it was obliterated by the cursed flames. Ironically, it was the arrogance and cruelty of one of his own followers that destroyed one of his anchors to immortality. Besides the Horcruxes and Deathly Hallows, there were many other powerful magical artifacts in the wizarding world, though none as dangerous or significant. The Sword of Gryffindor, which we've mentioned several times, was a remarkable weapon in its own right. Forged by goblins 1,000 years ago, it had unique properties. Goblin-forged weapons absorb only what strengthens them and repel dirt and corrosion. When Harry killed the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets, the sword absorbed the venom from its fangs, becoming permanently impregnated with one of the few substances capable of destroying Horcruxes. The sword also had the magical property of appearing to any true Gryffindor in time of need. It appeared to Harry in the Chamber of Secrets when he demonstrated true loyalty to Dumbledore. It appeared again to him at the bottom of a frozen lake, placed there by Snape, following Dumbledore's posthumous orders. And it appeared to Neville Longbottom when he needed to destroy Nagini. The goblins always contested ownership of the sword, arguing that goblin-forged artifacts should return to goblins after the death of whoever borrowed them. But the sword consistently chose new worthy Gryffindor owners. The Marauder's map was another fascinating magical artifact, though much less dangerous than the others we've discussed. Created by James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew during their years at Hogwarts, the map showed every person within Hogwarts grounds, including secret passages, hidden corridors, and the real-time movements of everyone in the castle. The creators, who called themselves Moony, Padfoot, Wormtail, and Prongs, had developed extraordinarily advanced magic to create the map, including spells that detected human presence and even revealed people under invisibility cloaks or polyjuice. The map had its own defenses against teachers and authorities. If someone the Marauders considered an enemy tried to read it, the map would insult them with messages signed by each of the creators. Fred and George Weasley stole the map from Filch's office in their first year and used it extensively for their pranks before passing it to Harry in his third year. Harry used the map countless times to explore Hogwarts, escape trouble, and eventually for much more dangerous missions. It was through the map that he saw Peter Pettigrew alive in the form of Scabbers, revealing that Sirius Black was innocent. The Pensieve was a rare magical object used to store and review memories. It looked like a shallow stone basin engraved with runes and magical symbols, filled with an ethereal silvery substance. Wizards could extract memories from their own minds using their wands, deposit them in the Pensieve, and then physically dive into them, reliving the events as an invisible observer. Dumbledore possessed a Pensieve in his office and used it frequently, both to store memories that needed analysis and to lighten his mind when it was too full. The Pensieve allowed multiple people to experience the same memories simultaneously, and more importantly, allowed them to see details that the original person may not have noticed or consciously remembered. It was through the Pensieve that Harry learned the true history of Voldemort, seeing memories collected by Dumbledore from people who had known him as Tom Riddle. It was in the Pensieve that Harry finally saw Severus Snape's complete memories, revealing his love for Lily Potter and his true loyalty. The Pensieve was a tool of truth, incapable of being fooled by false or modified memories, although memories from people who deceived themselves or convinced themselves of something false would still appear as they believed. The Mirror of Erised was an extremely dangerous magical mirror that Dumbledore kept hidden at Hogwarts. The name Erised is desire written backwards, and this reveals its function. The mirror showed the deepest and most desperate desire of whoever looked into it. Harry saw his family, alive and around him. Ron saw himself as head boy, Quidditch captain, excelling over his brothers. Dumbledore claimed to see himself holding a pair of thick woolen socks. But this was a lie. He saw his family reunited and whole, with Ariana alive and Aberforth forgiving him. The danger of the mirror was that people got lost in it, wasting their lives looking at dreams that would never come true. Dumbledore placed the mirror as the final protection for the Philosopher's Stone during Harry's first year. The mirror was enchanted so that it would only give the stone to someone who wanted to find it, but not use it, a brilliant philosophical distinction. Harry managed to retrieve the stone from the mirror because he wanted to stop Voldemort, not use the stone for himself. Quirrell, possessed by Voldemort, only saw himself using the stone, so he couldn't obtain it. After that year, Dumbledore destroyed the stone and hid the mirror again, removing both temptations from Hogwarts. The Sorting Hat was another artifact from the Founders, originally created by Godric Gryffindor and enchanted by the four Founders together. The hat had the extraordinary ability to read minds and evaluate character, valor, courage, intelligence and ambition of each student entering Hogwarts. Based on this analysis, it selected which house would be most appropriate for each student. But the hat also took into account the choices and desires of the student themselves, recognizing that our choices matter as much as our innate abilities. The hat had its own consciousness and even composed songs at the beginning of each school year, sometimes warning about future dangers or advising unity among the houses. During times of great need, the hat also served as a repository for the Sword of Gryffindor, which could be pulled from it by any true Gryffindor in danger. Both Harry and Neville experienced this, pulling the sword from the hat when they needed it most. The hat represented the Founders' ideals and continued their work 1,000 years after their deaths. Time-turners were extremely regulated and dangerous magical devices that allowed limited time travel. They looked like small hourglasses on golden chains. The Ministry of Magic strictly controlled all time-turners, keeping them locked in the Department of Mysteries. Hermione received one in her third year specifically to attend multiple classes that happened at the same time, an approved but highly uncommon use. The magical laws about time travel were strict. There was always the danger of creating paradoxes or altering the past in catastrophic ways. Hermione and Harry used the time turner to go back 3 hours and save Buckbeak, the condemned hippogriff, and Sirius Black, who was about to receive the Dementor's kiss. They had to be extremely careful not to be seen by their past selves or alter events they already knew happened. During the Battle of the Department of Mysteries, all the Ministry's time-turners were destroyed, eliminating the Wizarding World's ability to time travel. This was probably a good thing, considering the inherent dangers of that magic. The prophecy about Harry and Voldemort was stored in the Hall of Prophecy inside the Department of Mysteries. Prophecies were recorded in ethereal glass spheres that could only be touched by the people about whom the prophecy was made. The prophecy had been told by Sybil Trelawney to Dumbledore years before Harry's birth, predicting that someone would be born with power to defeat the Dark Lord, born to parents who had defied him 3 times, born as the 7th month dies. Voldemort had heard only part of the prophecy through Snape, who was spying for him at the time. It was Voldemort's obsession with hearing the complete prophecy that led to the Battle of the Department of Mysteries. He couldn't take the prophecy himself, so he manipulated Harry through false visions to retrieve it. But during the battle that followed, the sphere was destroyed, the prophecy lost. Ironically, this didn't matter, because the most important part of the prophecy wasn't in the specific words, but in the fact that Voldemort had chosen Harry as his equal by trying to kill him, marking him as his enemy, and transferring some of his own powers to the boy he tried to destroy. And so we end our journey through the most powerful magical artifacts of the wizarding world. We saw objects created with the best intentions that corrupted their owners. We saw tools of immortality that brought only death. We saw legendary relics that granted extraordinary power, but demanded terrible prices, and we learned that, in the end, it's not the objects that define destiny, but the choices we make about how to use them. Harry Potter possessed all three Deathly Hallows, becoming the true master of death, but his greatness wasn't in possessing them, it was in his wisdom to let them go. Voldemort created 7 Horcruxes seeking immortality, but all he achieved was tearing apart his own humanity until nothing worth preserving remained. True magic, as Dumbledore always knew, isn't in the objects we wield, but in the love, courage, and choices that make us who we truly are. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching until the end. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and tell me in the comments which of these artifacts you'd like to possess and why. Until the next video, and always remember, it is our choices that show who we truly are, far more than our abilities.